Often a man's greatest handicap in life may be himself. Certainly in my past, this has proven true. In my early life, I experienced much suffering. Most of the suffering was the result of my attitude, an attitude of self-pity, an attitude which would eventually lead to destruction, or at least to complete failure. It would be difficult to trace the development of this attitude, and probably even more difficult to understand. The importance of recognizing the signs of such development early in one's life cannot be underestimated. Some of the more prominent signs in my case were the lack of interest in school and a poor association with others. We moved around a lot, and in every new school I managed to get into a few fights. Introductory fights, you might say. They weren't very funny at the time, believe me. It's much better to put on a friendly smile, accompanied by a warm, sincere handshake. Anyway, these warning signs and others went unheeded. So I somehow continued on into high school, where most of the students put on the final polish on their education. They were developing their minds while I was still developing my attitude. They succeeded in their educational objective, and I succeeded in developing my attitude into a rather complete inferiority complex. I even reached my success before the other students. I dropped out of high school during the final year, not to make a fortune, but in an attempt to escape the misery and torture that filled my troubled soul. This attempted escape, like most, was a failure. In desperation, I enlisted in the Marine Corps. At first, I considered this a mistake, but soon I found that the rigid control and strict discipline of the Marine Corps was just what I needed. After boot camp and combat training, I felt I had gained around 45 pounds in weight. My health was 100% improved, and I felt like I could whip a tiger. But most of all, I felt proud. For the first time in my life, I felt proud. I became a spit and polished leatherneck. I worked hard at it, studied hard, and advanced to the rank of sergeant before the end of my 3-year enlistment. Tempted to stay in the Marine Corps, I fought off the homesickness as long as I could, but finally gave in and returned to Missouri. After a month on our farm in Shannon County, a place that was always dear to my heart, I started working at McDonald Aircraft in St. Louis. Here I began to slip back into my old attitude and became discontented and doubtful about the future. Factory work did not interest me, and I had no friends. I lived by myself and suffered a lonely, pointless existence. This continued for about 2 years, and I was nearing the breaking point. Even suicide entered my thoughts. I quit McDonnell Douglas Aircraft and returned once again to our farm. On August 10th, 1959, I started to work for the police department here. I was quite pleased with my new job and the interesting future it promised. Things were going well at last. Then on the eve of Thanksgiving, I received word that my father was seriously ill and had been taken to the hospital. He passed away while I was en route to the hospital. After the funeral, I sadly looked the old family farm returned to Springfield. I sadly looked at the family farm for the last time and returned to Springfield. The loss of my father created another void in my life, but I managed to wrap myself up in the newness of the police work. Still, I desired more out of life than just an interesting occupation. I wanted a home of my own, a family, and a reason to live. In June of 1961, I met the girl who was to change my whole life. She was different from anyone that I had ever known. She was pretty and still is. She was intelligent, sensible, but most of all, she was and is a true Christian. Not a demanding religious fanatic, but a patient, understanding Christian. A recent quote in the local newspaper might describe her best. It read, "One life showing the way is better than 10 tongues trying to tell it." I attended church with her every Sunday. It was different at first, but I was very interested and soon realized that here was the answer to my problem. On the 16th of July, that's my mom's birthday, I was baptized into Christ. The change in my life since that point is unbelievable. On February 16th, 1962, she became my wife. Later that year, we bought our first home. The following year, on October 3rd, the good Lord answered our prayers with the birth of our son, Mark. Mark is now 19 months old and the finest son any father could hope for. I certainly have not conquered all of my deficiencies. However, I have made progress. I would not be here tonight if it were not for this change in my life. So, if the greatest handicap is yourself, try a bowl of enthusiasm anew. The recipe is simple. Put everything you have into it.